www.com, Genesis Radio's owners, management, or affiliates.
It's another Thoughtful Thursday, and you're on the air with Ron and Romane. Unfortunately, Romane couldn't be with us again today. But folks, don't worry, Romane will be back. She's dealing with some serious issues right now, but thank God she will be joining us again shortly. We're just coming on the air with some old school from Earth, Wind, and Fire. Nothing like those old school jams.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Oh yeah, take you back, doesn't it? So we in studio, myself and of course the Mastermind TP Square, and we've been talking about some issues or an issue at the end of last week's show, and we talked about China, the nation of China, and in this country, our government tells us that China poses the greatest threat to America. Is that true? And just going a step further, what is the real relationship between America and China? Is it this adversarial thing? Are we at the brink of war with the Chinese government? I say, this is all theatrics. That's my way of expressing it is theatrical because realistically, most of our debt is underwritten by the Chinese. They buy our treasury bills on a pretty much daily basis. And if it were not for the Chinese buying our treasury bills, which is nothing but an accumulated debt, where would America be? And then when you go into some of these stores, Walmart, uh, Amazon, these big box stores, even companies like Amazon that deliver overnight, most of the products there seem to be coming from China or countries in that region, Vietnam, Thailand, places like that. So if the Chinese are our enemy, how do we borrow money from our enemy to fight with our enemy? And also, how do we allow our enemy to provide us with our modern electronics? And also, let's be realistic, our food. Do you allow your enemy to clothe you and feed you and also control your economy? So what's the real relationship? You know what I mean, TP? They're telling us that the Chinese are some great threat to America.
Nah, the Chinese is our savior.
Mm-hmm.
The Chinese is the greatest partner that the U.S. government could ever have.
Well, they're the biggest trading partner.
They're the biggest trading partner, and you know what? Because we are misled so much by the media that we don't know where our bread is buttered at.
Mm-hmm.
That American dollar don't mean nothing.
It don't mean nothing here.
It means nothing here, and it's virtually worthless.
Yeah, right.
You know what I mean? United States power in the world is military.
Mm-hmm.
We have great technology with weaponry.
We do.
That's about it.
Mm-hmm.
But we spend so much money minding everybody else's business and taking care of everybody else that we're in debt. And the only people who can get us out of debt is the Chinese. And the Chinese bails every company in the United States of America out of debt.
Well, you know something? It seems as if, so I remember back years ago, people used to make fun of the Chinese, right? Caricatures, right?
I respect them.
Well, you have to, because you know something? They sat back and they watched. They watched how America conducts business, domestically and on a global stage. And they bided their time. They built their economy. As they talked about the Asian miracle in the late 90s, early 2000s, how these Far East economies were, booming, right?
Mm-hmm.
All of these, by the way, were countries that we said were our enemies, like Vietnam,
yes.
Right? And China.
Yes.
Okay. Now their economies, just took off. Ours suffering. Our GDP, it may have been probably in the 40s and 50s. It may have been like maybe 10%. Now, if we get 1 or 2%, we think we're doing something.
That's right.
Right. But the reality is that, America, I think our day is past.
Gone.
And, the Chinese saw this. They saw the weakness in America's economy. They saw that America was doing some of the same things that the Soviet Union did. The Soviet Union probably outspent itself trying to keep pace with America in terms of its military, research and development and new weapons technology. America is spending more than probably Russia, China, and Iran combined just on weapons.
That's right.
So now,
and then guess what? We might have the weapons, right?
Right.
we're too scared to use them, so we sell them.
Right.
We give them to everybody else to use them, but we want to have control of them. Because let's be realistic, the Israelis can't do what they're doing if it wasn't for the American weaponry.
Well, let's be realistic. Every bullet they fire into these Palestinians, American bullets. You know, the some of the guns they use are the AR-15. And then they also have their version, you know, the Uzi, right? But the tanks, those are all American tanks. The planes that they fly, you know, all American planes. And, you know, so I guess realistically, we are just as responsible.
Yes.
Because if you give a child a gun and you don't let that child know the dangers of that gun, right?
Yes.
How serious it is, and that child kills somebody, you're responsible because you didn't say, hey,
you enabled them.
You enabled them. Perfect. You know, you put that perfectly. You enabled them to do this. And right now, things are getting out of control in that region. And, you know, I see that the way I'm looking at it, you know, probably by Christmas, so shortly thereafter, we'll be engaged in another war. Because, you know, war is business, big business.
It's big business.
Right? And we don't care about people dying.
No.
You know, our most recent Speaker of the House just elected, last week? And he already said Israel does not need a ceasefire. That Israel needs to go and destroy Hamas. Well, how do you know who's Hamas and who's an average civilian fleeing for their lives?
You don't.
In fact, Israel bombed a refugee camp. Well, wait a minute. You told these people to evacuate their homes to go, I think it's south, right? Toward the Rafah crossing with Egypt. And along the way, there are refugee sites where they might stop, rest, right? And now you bomb that and say you got 1 or 2 Hamas fighters, but you killed 200-300 people. But anyway, I think that China, they sat back and they watched. And now China is beating America at its own game.
Yes.
You know, years ago, American businessmen would go abroad and just buy up, you know, huge swaths of other people's countries. And now the Chinese have come here
to do the exact same thing.
The exact same thing.
All the farmland.
And a lot of these iconic buildings, they're not owned by, there might be a name on there. That's an American name. But the real owner is China.
Well, you know, as I was telling you the other day, Ron, when we talked about this, what blew my mind was I knew that General Electric was owned by the Chinese. I knew that. But when I found out that General Motors was 50% owned by Chinese, by the Chinese. That blew my mind.
Right, and an iconic American company.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. You know, and I mean, when I look at this list here, right, just to name a few, right, we got General Electric, AMC Theaters, Smithfield Foods, right, the Waldorf Astoria Hotel.
That's another iconic landmark in New York City.
IBM, Personal Computer Division, right? I mentioned General Motors already. Spotify, Tesla,
TikTok,
Snapchat, Microsoft Corporation. Who would ever think?
Right.
Who would ever think that Bill Gates wasn't the commandant of Microsoft anymore?
Right.
He's just a figurehead.
Well,
because who owns Microsoft? Microsoft's new headquarters, their U.S. headquarters are still in Washington, right? That's a building there, but their operating headquarters is in New Taipei.
Right.
In
Taiwan.
In the Taichung district.
Right.
New Taipei. That's where the operating headquarters of Microsoft.
So, you know, I think, I think obviously what they're doing is they're keeping the face, a familiar face, a familiar American face. But behind that face is the Chinese.
That's right. Hilton Hotels, right? The Hilton family, you think they walk around and Paris Hilton going, they doing all this stuff and they talk about their generational wealth and so on and so forth. Guess what? The Hilton family owns nothing.
Just the name.
Nothing.
Right.
Nothing.
Mm-hmm.
That's all they got left is the name.
Right.
You know, and everything. You lived in New York. You worked in New York.
Mm-hmm.
I remember when the satellite workspaces started opening up in New York. Remember, they would give you this nice prestigious address, and you could schedule your meetings and everything, and go there and work out of these spaces. And people thought that you were a up and coming company, and you had this nice address and everything else. They go in there. You had a receptionist. You had your phones, your copy machines, your printers. Everything was in there like it was your office. You rented that space for that time.
Right. She had space.
Right. They called it WeWork. Remember that?
Yeah.
And then they expanded it from Manhattan. They put it in Brooklyn. They put it in Queens, Bronx. They put it everywhere. Jersey, WeWork. Who swooped down and brought it?
Chinese.
The Chinese.
Right.
The Chinese came down there and brought that. I mean, it's just, who would have thought? Sotheby's. Sotheby's.
Right.
Who would ever think that?
That's the largest auction house.
Who would ever think the Chinese got that?
It's amazing. And something you think about it, it's not just the Chinese, right? Because we were talking about, the Saudis owning Citibank.
That's right.
Right. And, a lot of people are upset about this. They didn't give it a whole lot of press, but for years, a lot of business was conducted on golf courses. And of course, the prestigious golf tournament was the PGA. Now, the Saudis, right, have introduced their own tournament that has eclipsed the PGA. A lot of people are not happy about that, but that's the state of America, right? It seems like America is in the death roads, and what we're trying to do, we're trying to hold off what's inevitable, right? I mean, I was looking at the other day. So a lot of people may not know this, so let's just put it out there. There is a new gold-backed currency that is right around the corner. It's called the brick. So, or should I say BRICS, which is Brazil, Russia, Iran, China, and South Africa. They have combined, and these 5 countries are going to produce their own gold-backed currency. Now, they just had a conference a couple of weeks back, and they invited, I think it was 6 other countries to come and join them as part of this union,
to banish the dollar.
And that is going to take down the dollar as the world reserves currency, right? So if we think we're having a hard time now putting food on the table and keeping a roof over our head, what happens when we hit hyperinflation? When a loaf of bread that's $5 now is $50 in 2 months, right? What do we do then? And, our government is trying to prevent this from happening. And one of the ways they're doing it is warfare.
War, absolutely.
So, when Colonel Gaddafi was in charge in Libya, I guess going back to the late 80s, our government identified him as being a threat for some reason. What made him a threat? I mean, here's a man who came to power. When he came to power in Libya, I think 70% of the population couldn't read and write. He instituted literacy programs, taught people to read, taught people to write, improved the economy, improved the country of Libya as a whole.
Well, guess what? He purchased the Fiat company. Remember, Fiat's vanished off the Western roads? He purchased Fiat, which was an Italian company. And all the Western countries stopped selling Fiat. Right. Because it was owned by the Libyan government. Right. How about that?
Well, he also allocated $70 billion for countries in the African Union so they wouldn't have to rely on the World Bank and International Monetary Fund, which has been controlling Africa's development, African economy, Africa's development, Africa's hopes for generations. So I guess the powers that be said, if he is allowed to do this, 1, establish a gold-backed currency, and 2, take Africa off of the World Bank and International Monetary Fund, we will lose control of Africa, and we will lose control of potentially trillions of dollars in profits just from the interest on the loans that we forced upon these African countries. So, it's for that, he was a threat. Going back to when this whole the Lockerbie, Scotland incident where
the Pan Am thing.
Pan Am flight blew up, and all of a sudden, Libya became the boogeyman, right?
A terrorist.
Well, next thing you know, next on the list was Saddam Hussein. So you know what George W. Bush did? He did the classic bait and switch. So he said, look, we have been attacked by these terrorists, right? Terrorist organization who came to our country and commandeered planes and flew them into the World Trade Center and other buildings, in this country. And he said, well, we've identified the mastermind as being Osama bin Laden. Okay. Now, I don't think it's a secret anymore now that we have, so much information available on the internet, Dr. Google. It's not a secret anymore that Osama bin Laden was a CIA operative. Right? He was an asset, should I say. So to say that he was unknown to the American government, come on now. You don't lose control of your assets.
Nope.
And not only that, going back to the 70s, I think about 77, George W. Bush wanted to start his own oil company. So he started a company called Abusto Oil, but he needed investors. One of the first families to invest was a family by name of the Bin Laden family. That I think gave him initially $50,000 to start up his company. But of course, years later, I don't know that dude. Right. Well, anyway, our troops now, after this attack on the World Trade Center, so many young men and women said, look, we need to defend our country. They ran down to recruiting offices in record numbers.
They sure did.
Got down there and said, we're going to defend our country. We're going to get some payback. Prepared to go to Afghanistan to hunt down Osama bin Laden. Next thing you know, here comes the switch.
They were in Iraq.
Right. Now we need Saddam Hussein to disarm. Wait a minute now. You said the dude is in Afghanistan in a cave. Afghanistan. Well, what does that have to do with it? Iraq. Well, Saddam Hussein has a arsenal of weapons of mass destruction. And the next one could be a mushroom cloud. Now look, after the first Gulf War was over, they sent in inspectors, the UN, and I think the International Atomic Energy Administration, whatever, sent in inspectors to inspect Iran or Iraq's nuclear sites or suspected nuclear sites. This was going back to the 90s. They didn't find a damn thing.
Nothing.
And the report was given that said, well, we haven't found any offensive weapons or weapons of mass destruction. If you didn't have them in 95, you didn't have them 6 years later in 2001 or 2002 or 3 when we decided to invade, right? There was no reason or no legitimate reason for us to be there except for loads of oil and a man, Saddam Hussein, who wanted to go off the dollar. And America feared, like, nope, we cannot allow this dude, this camel jockey, to upset our economy. So we took him out. Now, the boogeymen are Russia, China, Iran, North Korea. And let's sprinkle in Venezuela. Well, for Russia and Vladimir Putin, we have been surrounding Russia with ballistic missiles going back to the fall of the Soviet Union. Now, there was supposed to be an agreement between, I believe it was Gorbachev and Reagan, that said, look, if the Soviet Union breaks up, that you will not put offensive weapons into Eastern Europe. When America's way of keeping treaties is pretty much the same thing they did with the Indians. Oh yeah, sign this, and we will not take any more of your land. Well, the Indians, I think, have a good term for white men speak with forked tongue.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, because they broke every single treaty with the indigenous people of this country, and with the Soviet Union, of course, people in this country saw an opportunity. Soviet Union, he doesn't have that block of countries protecting him. So let's expand NATO. Let's keep adding more countries into NATO. And with each country that joins NATO, we're going to put weapons in there. And we're going to send American troops. And now we have American troops in Poland, Latvia, and several other Eastern European countries. So they're threatening Vladimir Putin. China is in a unique position because, again, our electronics, China. A lot of our iconic buildings, China. Our economy, predicated on China.
Our food,
China.
Hey,
So
they own California grapes.
Well, here's the thing. Now, we keep talking about Taiwan, right? China considers Taiwan just a part of China. Taiwan is saying, well, we're independent. Well, the Chinese are saying, no, you're not. And you're not putting any American bases or American military on Taiwan. We consider that to be an act of war. For the United States, we want to show, we have our show of forces in the region, right? We'll get close to Chinese carriers and Chinese MiGs and American planes will fly in close proximity. It's saber rattling, right? But for America, how do we fight a war against the same people that are buying our treasury bills, that are putting money into our pocket? So is China going to fund a war against themselves?
Hey, listen, one thing I can say about all the Asian countries, Japan, China, they don't compete against themselves.
Why would they?
Their goal to succeed is called market share. They will gobble up everything to get market share, just like they did with Sony. You remember when Sony products came in the market?
Oh, yeah, sure.
They were good products and they were dirt cheap. You had Crazy Eddie. Crazy Eddie was one of the first stores that sold Sony products. It was stores like that. It was stores down on Canal Street. The little mom and pop stores sold Sony products. As soon as everybody drank the juice and everybody wanted Sony products, Sony had the market share. When they got the market share, what happened to Sony? The price went up.
Right.
It became the most expensive electronic in the world.
Well, you know something, TP? See, you and I grew up around the same time, right? Everybody drove an American car.
That's right.
We used to laugh at the little foreign cars, right?
Yep.
You didn't drive one of those, called little rice burners.
That's right.
Well, here we are, 40 years later. Everybody driving them little rice burners.
That's right. Because
so now,
Mr. Ronald Reagan, the Union Buster, he allowed the tariffs to be so low because he wanted to destroy the United Auto Workers Unions. Right?
Damn right.
So now you could go out and buy a Honda, a Toyota, a Nissan. You can buy two of those cars
for the price of one American. Damn right.
That's right. And that's how American families started having two cars.
And you know something? See, a lot of folks in this country, right? I guess they kind of missed the boat when they talk about, jobs going overseas. This just didn't start.
No.
This goes back.
That's what destroyed Detroit.
Absolutely. This goes back to Reagan.
Reaganomics.
This goes back to Margaret Thatcher. The two of them got together. And they had an economist by the name of Milton Friedman from, I believe it was the University of Chicago. And he started talking about, listen, what you need to do is you need to start outsourcing. You have all of these people working for the government. Instead of having them work for the government, let it go to the private sector. To reduce government spending. And when that happened, American businessmen started seeking cheaper markets, less in terms of labor, construction costs, material costs. So all of a sudden, we used to make cars in Detroit. Now you buy an American car, well, the engines come from Mexico.
Mm-hmm.
The interiors come from Canada,
Mm-hmm.
right? How much of an American car is American anymore?
That's right. Well, you can see what happened with GM, which I
Mhm.
do the research. I found out GM stopped making small and mid-sized cars
Mm-hmm.
because of their partnership with the Chinese.
Mm-hmm.
You're going to make trucks. You're going to keep the Icon Corvette, and you're going to keep the Camaro for a couple more years.
Mm-hmm.
But after that, you're going to make electric trucks. You're going to make an electric Corvette, and the mid-sized cars are going to be Chinese cars.
Mm-hmm.
So all those mid-sized American cars that's being shipped all over the world, that's over. It's done.
Well, you know something? That's exactly what America used to do. See, we used to take over other people's markets, right, and create jobs at home.
Mm-hmm.
So now the manufacturing base has shifted overseas. So now we're losing jobs here. They're gaining jobs in China,
Mm-hmm.
in Vietnam, places like that. India, right?
Yeah.
You know, their populations are exploding. And you know something? Their economies are going to explode too.
Well, you want to hear something else funny? You go to sports. You're a basketball man.
Oh, yeah.
Right? LeBron James.
Mm-hmm.
Then he took his talents from Cleveland to Miami,
Sure did.
right? And he did his thing, right? Then all of a sudden, one day, he decided he was going to go back to Cleveland.
Mm-hmm.
Remember?
Yeah. Wanted to win a championship at home.
Well, that's what we thought,
Mm-hmm.
right? He wanted to win. He wanted to win at home, but the deal, he got a crazy Eddie deal to come back to Cleveland.
Mm-hmm.
When it wasn't guaranteed that he would win a championship there, but he negotiated such a deal to win a championship because the Chinese own the Cleveland Cavaliers.
Oh, really?
Yes, they did a George Steinbrenner. We're gonna pay you. Remember, he got a huge contract
Mm-hmm.
to come back to Cleveland.
Right.
Cleveland couldn't afford that contract
Right.
because Cleveland's a small market.
Right.
How do you keep a superstar in a small market like that?
Chinese got plenty of money.
Chinese got plenty of money.
Oh, yeah.
LeBron James was instrumental in handpicking the team
Mm-hmm.
that he would play with. And they didn't make enough money to cover all those expenses of the basketball court.
Mm-hmm.
It was the investors that said, we're going to do this. And they cut the crazy Eddie deal.
Mm-hmm.
How many people think that the Chinese own the Cleveland Cavaliers?
You know,
Nobody.
See, a lot of people don't know these things, right? And because the media keeps feeding them the nonsense that China is the enemy, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that they pose the greatest threat to America. America posed the greatest threat to itself.
That's right.
Because, you know, we didn't have to start sending jobs overseas. We didn't have to turn Detroit into a wasteland.
Mm-hmm.
We didn't have to start putting poisonous water into Flint, Michigan.
That's right.
These are business decisions made by Americans,
Mm-hmm.
not by the Chinese, not by the not by the Vietnamese, not by these so-called communist countries, but by American legislators and American businessmen. So that we find children in places like Flint, Michigan, drinking water that you wouldn't feed to a sick dog.
And the other thing that's crazy, what people don't realize, all the farms are owned by the Chinese. Now, the people that run the farms used to own the farms. Now they're more like sharecroppers.
Mm-hmm.
All right. All the profit go to the Chinese.
Mm-hmm.
All the product is shipped to China in most cases, right? And they buy so much. They buying up so much stuff. They went from buying commercial businesses to buying farmland.
Mm-hmm.
Now they're buying residential property.
Well, you know, the Chinese are not stupid.
But you know how they buy residential property?
How?
They're setting up all these companies, right? And people go and refinance their house, and they take out these mortgages, right?
Mm-hmm.
Now, when you go apply for a mortgage, right, all these emails you see from all these companies to refinance your house,
Right.
they're never available to purchase a house.
Mm-hmm.
They're only in the market for refinancing,
Right.
right? Well, guess what? The Chinese,
Mm-hmm.
the Linden Club,
Waiting for you to default.
Linden Club,
Mm-hmm.
Chinese, Linden Tree, Chinese.
Mm.
Now, how many people refinance their cars, their houses, and everything else through Linden Tree
A lot.
and Linden Club?
Mm-hmm. So I mean,
Owned by the Chinese.
right.
Those are
So-
Chinese dollars you're getting.
So I mean, what's happening is China, like I said, they watched America, and I guess the other, what I'm looking for, other colonial powers, how they did business, how they conducted themselves, and China has mastered the game, and now they are angry because the student is now the teacher.
Mm-hmm.
And we talk about the U.S. economy, right? I've been noticing things. I remember growing up in New York, you had Yankee Stadium, you had Shea Stadium,
Mm-hmm.
right? Okay. It's about all of the professional stadiums were named after an individual,
Mm-hmm.
a city or a location or an individual. Today, all of the stadiums are owned by corporations.
By corporations.
Right. A lot of people don't pay attention to this, right?
Mm-hmm.
But that's a clear indication of the corporate takeover,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Absolutely.
And now, what's interesting, I spoke to somebody just the other day, and they were talking about all the construction in New York City. Who they building this stuff for? New York City has, I think she said that she was looking it up, and they're like, over the past maybe 10 years, they have built capacities for I think nearly 200,000 people to live. But these are luxury apartments.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Where are the low income and moderate income apartments? We always say that.
Well, they have something called City Connect.
Mm-hmm.
They look like luxury apartments. But what they do is they allocate X amount of apartments
Mm-hmm.
for low income
Mm-hmm.
and middle income.
Mm-hmm.
When I say allocate, it might be 10 apartments
Right.
in a unit that got 200 apartments.
Right. And the bulk are going to go to the rich people.
Yes.
But
And not only that, if you're in Manhattan and you happen to win the lottery to get one of those apartments in that building,
mm-hmm.
and you get a subsidized apartment, you can't use the front door.
You got to use the poor door.
That's right.
I remember that. There
Right.
was a door they added so that the poor people wouldn't have to be seen going in the same door
Mm-hmm.
as the wealthy tenants.
Mm-hmm.
But where are these people going to come from? Because let's be realistic. America's economy is in the toilet. I don't care what Biden is saying with this Bidenomics nonsense. America's economy is shot.
Mm-hmm.
We spent ourselves into a hole, trillions of dollars in debt that we could never pay off this debt. We can't even pay off the interest on this debt, and we keep accumulating more. So today, I'm looking at the news, and the new Speaker of the House says they are going to set aside appropriations for Ukraine. I think $50 billion. I think maybe $30 billion for Israel, and then there's some money's going to be set aside for Taiwan.
What about?
Now let's think.
What about Gaza?
Well, no. See, Gaza is a whole different story, right? Gaza is Hamas, right? There's nothing in Gaza but terrorists. So Israel has a right to defend itself, right? Palestinians do not have that right. So because of that, they don't need any money.
Well, who's
They
acting
can't
as,
even
who's,
get-
who's acting as a terrorist today?
Well, look, they can't even get humanitarian aid because Israel has been asked repeatedly, let's have a ceasefire just so we can get the aid into these people. And Israel has refused. And America has backed them in their refusal. So yeah, who is the terrorist and who's being terrorized? But of course, when you own the media outlets, you get to tell your story. And you get to say, well, we were minding our own business and all of a sudden we were attacked.
But what about the stories of them kicking in doors of
Mhm.
homes in the West Bank,
Mm-hmm.
telling the people that they got 24 hours to leave the house
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
because they were taking over?
Mm-hmm.
That's terrorism.
Well, you know what? According to Israel and the United States, that is, I guess that's protecting, a part of Israel's protection, right? To ensure that there are no more Hamas fighters in Gaza. Let's be realistic. We don't know if there were ever any Hamas fighters there. All we know is what we were told, that they are entrenched, dug in into Gaza. Gaza has basically been flattened.
Mm-hmm.
So who the hell is still in there hiding? They talk about the tunnels that are underneath, the hospitals. And that's another one. They bombed the hospital because they said that there are tunnels underneath the hospital. Well, how do you know that? How do you know that there's tunnels there?
Mm-hmm.
When they were bringing in the weapons that you said were used to attack you, you didn't know about the tunnels. All of a sudden, now you know about them, and now you need to seal them. Now you need to bomb these people. Come on now. But I know that in this country, we rely on the fact that people are going to get the information from the TV. They're not going to read a book. One of the things Malcolm says, if you want to hide something from a black man, put it in the book. He knew we weren't going to open that book to do any sort of research. And the government counts on us not doing any sort of research, just to take what they say, at face value and don't think about it. And, because of that, Americans are suffering. And Americans are going increasingly angry. But who are you angry at? You angry at the Chinese because you say they are a threat to America. But the Chinese are in the position they're in because America allowed it to happen. Well, American businessmen decided not to invest in America.
One of the biggest power moves the Chinese just made,
mm-hmm.
Ron, they jumped into the healthcare arena.
Mm-hmm.
They jumped into the healthcare arena. We see all these commercials about Alliance Healthcare Services,
mm-hmm.
right? And Biden has taken all the credit for lowering the prices of
prescription drugs,
mm-hmm. and lowering the prices of insulin and all this other stuff, right? Guess who's behind that? The Chinese.
Right.
The Chinese. Alliance Healthcare.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? And because they're using this American name, but you telling us that China, as Donald Trump said,
mm-hmm.
is the enemy.
Right.
Right? Meanwhile, China subsidized everything that we got going on here.
Mm-hmm.
Everything.
Right.
Even down to our healthcare right now.
Well, is the problem that China's the enemy, or is the problem that what we have done to others is now being done to us and we don't like it?
Well, as my post said today, the United States need to mind their business. You reap what you sow.
You know what? Absolutely. And that's what's happening, right? For years, American businessmen went around the world and they invested heavily in foreign markets, so that companies that had that were owned by Chinese, entities were owned by Americans,
mm-hmm.
and that was all around the world, right? Mm-hmm. Now, Malcolm said the best of chickens have come home to roost, and some of these chickens speak Chinese, and they are now taking over this country,
mm-hmm.
Block by block, swath of land by swath of land, corporation by corporation.
Hell, they even sell us life insurance now. That $9.99 plan,
right?
You see that TV commercial?
Mm-hmm.
It's a Chinese company.
You know what?
The other companies that you see that say they got the commercial, you're living on a gold mine,
mm-hmm.
right? Sell your life insurance policy,
right?
Chinese company.
Well, you know what? I'm gonna go home and look under my bed, see if there's Chinese men under there.
That's right.
Because you know what?
Fidelity Guarantee Company.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. Ain't no more John Hancocks and all them because Fidelity.
Swallowed up.
Fidelity.
Right.
Japanese,
Yeah,
Chinese.
I'm be looking under my bed.
Headquarters, Beijing, China.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean?
Right. But this only happened because American businessmen allowed it to happen. Our government allowed it to happen. And now people are angry at the Chinese saying, well, look, China's buying up everything. Well, it was for sale.
Mm-hmm.
It was for sale. American business companies or corporations didn't want to keep it, didn't want to let you have it.
Mm-hmm.
So they sold it to the highest bidder. And it just so happened the highest bidder is the Chinese.
Jennifer Convertible. Remember Jennifer Convertible?
Sure.
Raymond and Flanagan?
Yep.
Same company.
Right.
What was the other one? I forget the name of that company. They was huge for a long time too. Furniture company. What
was it Castro Convertible?
Castro Convertible.
I love those.
And somebody else.
Yeah.
Well, guess what? Chinese own them too.
Yeah. Well,
because I can't pronounce the name of the company. I'm looking at it right here. They all owned by the same company.
Well, you know what? China's buying up everything, right? Because it's for sale. And you know something?
That's because the people don't realize that the moment these companies go public,
mm-hmm.
right, it becomes all about the shareholders, right? And if somebody come along willing to purchase at a premium all the shares,
mm-hmm.
well, that's how they come in taking these companies.
Mm-hmm.
And you get a guy like Elon Musk.
Right.
This guy owns virtually 3% more than the Chinese in Tesla.
Mm-hmm. So he's holding controlling stock.
He's holding controlling stock
mm-hmm.
by 3%.
Right.
By 3%.
Right.
That's why everything is in China. Everything.
And you know, I think what the government's fear is, they understand the relationship between, you know, themselves and the Chinese. I think their problem is, and I think the other former colonial powers problem is, the fact that not only is China buying up America and parts of Europe, China's all over Africa.
Mm-hmm.
Africa is the world.
And the Caribbean.
Right. But Africa has all of the wealth of this planet. The diamonds, the gold,
mm-hmm.
the strategic metals,
mm-hmm.
Africa. And now down in Haiti,
mm-hmm.
after those earthquakes and the fishes opened up, and they saw all that iridium, now the Chinese are there too. America wants that iridium.
Mm-hmm.
The colonial powers want that iridium. So much so, remember Haiti's former president, Juvenal?
Mm-hmm.
What happened to him?
Eating cans Christmas.
Yes, sir. All of a sudden, Colombians came into Haiti and assassinated the president?
Mm-hmm.
Come on now. Colombians? You know, look, if anybody in this country can't see through that, that means you need prescription windshields.
That's right.
That is clearly something set up by our CIA.
Yep.
Because, you know, Juvenal did not want to sign the contracts. If you're not going to sign these contracts to let us get our hands on potentially trillions of dollars worth of this precious metal, oh, you know you're going to get smoked. If they will smoke the president, John F. Kennedy, in their own country, you know they'll smoke another president.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? That's just business 101 in America.
As I go through this list and I look at stuff, it just blows my mind. Because I think of all the late night TV I watch when I'm wake up in the middle of the night and I roll over and I see all these different infomercials and all this stuff, man.
Mm-hmm.
GNC. They sell all the vitamins, all
mm-hmm.
kinds of stuff, and headquartered in Beijing.
Mm-hmm.
GNC was headquartered in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania.
Mm-hmm.
They purchased it for $300 million.
Now, what happens when the Chinese purchase these companies? What happens to the employees?
Well, I'm not certain what happens to the employees. Some of them stay employed.
Mm-hmm.
You know, if they gotta keep continuity.
Mm-hmm.
Some of them stay employed
mm-hmm.
as they slowly
phase them out,
phase them
right?
out and move
Because
to
they
Georgia.
want you to train
Right.
your Chinese counterpart,
Right.
because that's where your job is going. Because
right.
if the headquarters is in Pittsburgh, right,
Mhm.
they don't need two headquarters.
Right. And now it's in Beijing.
Right. So now these folks in Pittsburgh,
Mhm.
okay, you're going to train this dude over here in Taipei, and in 5 years, he's going to be working your job, and you be on the unemployment line.
Damn, they even own Airbnb.
Wow.
But I just saw the dude who created Airbnb on TV the other day.
Right.
Talking about the money that he made, the money that he lost, and all this other stuff. But I guess you live behind the hog because you done sold out to the Chinese.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. So basically,
Brian Chesky.
So basically, the Chinese control America.
They brought Airbnb back in 2017 for $100 million. That was the Brian Chesky and Joe Gebbia.
You know what? Maybe we need to learn to speak some Chinese. You know what I mean? I think the state language is Mandarin, so we need to learn to speak some of that. You know what I mean? Because
and they used a company by the name of Next Year Automotive to buy up General Motors.
And I mean, General Motors was one
baseball, hot dog, apple pie, and Chevrolet.
There you go. One of the iconic companies in this country. And then when you talk about General Electric for years was the most profitable corporation in this country. Now it's ExxonMobil.
Mm-hmm.
But for years, it was General Electric.
Mm-hmm.
And now General Electric, another iconic company, is owned by China. So what is it that, why would our government want to keep people in the dark about this situation?
Because you know what? If you don't know and you don't want to know, you don't need to know.
Right.
Right. And you know what? You know the old saying, let the dead take care of the dead.
Right.
And that's what's happening right here. Because you got people like Donald Trump telling you that the election was stolen.
Right.
And that he's a multi-billionaire.
Right.
Because he's a celebrity. And you eat it all up. But if you do the research on him, you'll say that, hold up, but you don't own those buildings.
Just the naming rights.
Just the naming rights. Oh, but you don't have that money.
Right.
Where's the money at? Where's the liquid? There's no liquid. You know, and when you do the research, you realize that how many people are you in bed with on the properties that you do own?
Right.
You know what I mean? So ignorance is bliss. The American people are ignorant, and just keep in mind that most people in America, and I say this again, most people in America have a middle school level of education. No matter how, I mean, most people in America, if you gave them a lease for an apartment, couldn't read and understand it.
Right.
You know what I mean? If you give them a contract for the sale of a car, the finance a car, they can't read it. A mortgage, they can't read it. That's why people are out here spending 23 and 28% to buy a car.
Right.
When you like, but you have options. Look at all the, I mean, how could you see an advertisement say that you can get 2.2% financing, but you end up signing a paper for 28%?
You know, I think that maybe America wants
is the dumbest country in the damn world.
And I think we want to lead the corporations, the corporate masses and the government. I think want to lead the American people to believe that America's still in control.
And in control
economically, socially, politically, and militarily. And on all fronts, America will be surprised to find that, yeah, we have a powerful military. But when was the last time America won a war? You know, if you go back in the 50s, we fought in Korea. Split. Didn't win it. It was the Korean War. Typically, actually, never ended. It's a ceasefire. Everybody's pushed back to the beyond the demilitarized zone, the 30th parallel. Then we went to Vietnam. 10 years over there. Did we win in there?
Didn't win that either.
Okay. So I guess if we count places like Panama, uh, the Dominican Republic in 65, Haiti, we've invaded Haiti a couple of times. But I guess if we count those are military victories. But in terms of actual war with a country that has comparable weapons, comparable size, personnel, we ain't won a war in a long time. And now we are in the Red Sea threatening Iran.
Well,
What the hell are these people thinking? Now, if you think about it, America has bases spread all over the globe,
that's right.
right? Okay. If you go rushing into Iran, and Iran has 2.3 million personnel, military personnel, that's standing army. It doesn't include the reservists. You go rushing in there, and I think they have 7 naval vessels in the Gulf. Well, if things start to go bad, you now have troops you need to move from Australia, from Latin America, from Europe. You going to get there in time to rescue those folks?
Nope.
Hell no.
Listen, if they all wake up tomorrow, decide that we don't like what's happening over there,
right?
We're gonna band together and we're gonna move collectively.
Mm-hmm. We're gonna have to leave.
The United States can't do nothing.
We're gonna have to leave.
Either you're gonna drop the big bomb, or you're gonna leave, and you're gonna tell those other folks, "Well, come on, y'all, come over here with us." Give it back to them.
Well, you know what? What happens if the Saudis were to say, "Hey, America, I think you need to pull your ships out of this region. Are we going to cut off oil supplies to the U.S.?"
Yep.
So that instead of paying $3.50 a gallon, how about you pay $10 a gallon? How about we raise the price of a barrel of oil? How about we get the other oil producing countries also to slow production of oil? So that instead of getting 150,000 barrels a day, now it's down to 75. We cut production in half. What you gonna do now, America?
We'll fall in line.
We ain't got a choice, because for every plane, you got to put fuel in it.
That's right.
For every tank, you got to put fuel in it.
That's right. You're gonna fall in line.
Right. So I think that America has put itself in a real bad situation by backing Israel. You know, Israel, like we said at the start of the show, the rest of the world has condemned Israel's actions.
Mm-hmm.
And Israel is saying, okay, I hear your condemnation, but we're not slowing down. We are going to continue launching attacks into Gaza. We're going to continue our bombing campaign.
We're going to stop right here. This hour done blew by real quick.
Mm-hmm.
And we got stratagem outside waiting to come on in. So,
well, you know what? Y'all stay on. You keep listening to Gynesis Radio. The strategy and the crew will be coming through the door momentarily. You'll hear some good music and some good discussion. And we'll see you again right back here next Thursday.
That's right. We'll be back.
Oh, man. I'm hungry now. Started. All right.